Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, the case study webinar for the current barriers and challenges for the implementing and enhancement of EBT, CBTA programs. This webinar is getting recorded, so if anyone feels not comfortable, please drop a message or raise your hand. I hope everyone can hear as well. We did a test in the beginning. Everything looks fine. I see someone is saying I cannot use my micro. It is locked, which is actually supposed to be. I think questions and Q&A should be left to the end. So I will give the floor now to Francisco. Francisco, the floor is yours. And I'm out. I'm now in the background. If any technical support is needed, feel free to ping me anytime.
Thank you, Tom. Welcome to this webinar. This webinar belongs to the research program 0046, which I display here. And remember that this research is supported or described in the European Plan for Aviation Safety 2023-2025. Let me put you through exactly where we are. So as I said, in the EPAS 2023-2025, we have a research. The research's number is 0046. And you will see there in the descriptions that there are 3 lots. The one that is applicable to us is lot 3, which is data science application. And inside this lot 3, there's 3 cases of studies. Sorry for the numbering. It's case 1, case 2, and case 3. And we are, in this case, the use of flight training data to support the application of evidence-based, competency-based training concept. The idea specifically on today's call and in detail for this case study 1 is the use of flight training data to support the application of evidence-based training and competency-based training. And if you will see in the EASA website, when you go to Data APP Digital Transformation, you will see that this project is funded by the Horizon Europe, which is a research activity of the European Union. And it's about 800,000 euros. And it will run from last year to August 2020. The idea of this project is to see and to study possible changes to the existing aviation standards. In this particular case, we are talking about CBTA and EBT. Also to determine and prepare the roadmap to change those standards that I mentioned, meaning the regulation, in a way that is effectively supporting the planning of the regulatory activities. And finally, to create the knowledge base, meaning the knowledge, the understanding of this matter, because this has impact in the operations, in the working processes of aviation standard, and of course the associated regulatory changes that we described. Also, there's a small point here about the economic impact, because it's important to know in this context what's the impact in terms of economic perspective. So without more delay, thank you very much for these 2 minutes, and I will pass the floor to our researchers. They've been awarded to this with this part of the research activity, and I give the floor to, I think, Nuria from Barcelona, that she will give you an overview of today's webinar and in general the intention of this research activity. Thank you, Nuria. Welcome. Bienvenida.
Thank you, Francisco. Thanks for the introduction, and welcome everyone to this webinar. I am Nuria Alzina, principal at ALG, leading the digital in aviation area. And together with me, I have today Antonio Cabeza, the technical lead for this project, Andrada Bujor, the team leader, and Alex Olivera, the main consultant researching on this topic. And basically, we're here today to talk about EBT and CBTA program and the challenges so far. Why are we conducting this webinar and this project? Basically, because digital transformation has, as you know, increased its pace in the past decade. And we need to link this space with operations and regulation. So basically, one of the questions that we want to answer is, are we up? Can we actually keep the pace in operations and regulation for this project? And where can regulators actually help in streamline the opportunities that digital transformation provides us to help us improve and overcome the challenges that we have in the other areas, mostly in operations. So as aviation is quite wide, we are focusing this project in 3 main case studies. The one that we are presenting today in this webinar is the flight training data for EBT CBTA, and we will have 2 additional webinars, one on Friday on digital fuel management and another one more focused on flight data models for safety that will take place next Monday. If you are as well familiar or want to know more about these topics, please feel free to register to those webinars also on the website of the project. To introduce a bit more the webinar, we will let you know a bit where we are and what have we done for this research project so far. Basically, as any research project, we started evaluating and researching on the state of the art through a literature review, where we identified different papers and positions of stakeholders on the main challenges that they identified on these topics, and as well started identifying some digital solutions that have started to appear. From that, we started building our case studies and our work plan, and then started what we call the consultation process, where we identify stakeholders on a 360 degrees. So we tackle both people working on operations, but as well providers, regulators, authorities, etc. And we started gathering their feedback, mainly focused on actually perceiving their day-to-day challenges on these topics. Today we are here to present you these preliminary outcomes of this initial research, particularly these challenges. And what we want to obtain from you is actually feedback on these results that we have obtained. Are we covering everything? Are we missing some relevant point that we have not identified so far and you think it's important that we take it into account? And for that, we will have, of course, the feedback from this session through the question and answers, but you can as well contact us in our email addresses or LinkedIn, and we will open a questionnaire that we'll present furthermore at the end, where we want to gather in a more systemic manner, let's say, your feedback on these challenges, and as well start opening up the discussion on the potential solutions and how can we identify which solutions are more relevant than others. For that, the next step, and as I mentioned, the feedback from this questionnaire will be one first introduction to it. We will evaluate the impact of the solutions that we can propose, and finally produce a set of material for regulators where we will set some recommendations on how regulators can actually help the industry streamline these solutions. And before I give the floor to my colleagues to actually enter into the more details of the research results, I would like to thank the different companies within the industry who has helped us so far already with the interviews, dedicating part of their time so that we could better grasp this perspective of the industry and the challenges that they are facing, in this case, for the EBT CBTA implementation. So now I will pass the floor to Antonio, who will start his conversation on the challenges and the results that we have obtained so far.
Thank you, Maria. I'm Antonio Cabeza, technical lead of this research initiative. First of all, before starting with the discussion, I would like to thank, I believe that we are more than 100 people connected, so thank you very much for your participation. Today, we're going to discuss the main digital data-related limitations to the adoption of evidence-based training programs. which have been identified in the basis of this research and as well one-to-one interviews. At the end, you should consider that evidence-based training, as you may know, as its core, is a data-driven approach to aviation training. So in EBT, the operational data is key. It's a new approach to training and assessment where operational data is key. Under EBT, we evaluate the competency, the capability of a trainee, a pilot, for instance, across a range of core capabilities. We are no longer evaluating pilots by the performance of individual events or maneuvers. And the key word here is evidence. EBT involves the systematic integration of available, reasonable evidence in your expertise and as well individual operational experience. And at the end, this means data. Okay, so the combination of data empowers us at making relevant decisions, shape and customize our training in a way that it is effective and it is based on branded real-world situations. So before going to the actual limitations that we have captured in the context of our investigation, I would like first to give you an overview on what is the status and maturity of EBT at the European level. These figures that you can see in these slides have been provided by EASA on the context of a survey that they launched. You need to consider that from a regulatory perspective, the EBT is relatively new. So it took its first step in 2015 at regulatory level, and then operators progressively aligned to EBT since 2017. So it is progressively evolving, let's say, from a regulatory perspective. So what do we have right now? We have 18 operators from this survey that EASA launched over 9 authorities and 26 operators. We can tell that we have in Europe 18 operators in EBT mixed, with the aim to reaching EBT baseline. Then 2 operators in ETQP, which is potentially EBT mixed, potentially transitioning to EBT baseline, and then 6 operators in EBT baseline. Beyond that, we can say that EBT has proved to be effective because almost 99%, between 97 and 99% of pilots under EBT are competent, which means that we are taking a great step towards safety. And not only that, but EBT also allows for greater efficiency and flexibility. For instance, if flexibility for the validity of the line check. So overall, EBT is a robust framework for pilot training with a lot of advantages that pay off, and that the industry should continue promoting it. And that's precisely what we need to understand, which are the challenges ahead to enable, to enhance or improve its adoption. So from a data perspective, why can we say, or why is data-driven practice so essential in the context of EBT? The answer lies in the power of data that data holds today in today's digital, let's say, digital age. We are now equipped with the ability to analyze and collect a vast amount of data from a lot of different data sources. FDM data, flight data, pilot training records, safety occurrences, and by harnessing this data, we can gain valuable insights into pilot behavior, but as well operational patterns and potential areas for improvement, not only at operator level, but as well at individual pilot level. So we can proactively design our evidence-based training programs in a way that we attack the underlying risks, which are more on the inherent pilot behavior rather than acting on a reactive way to potential accidents or events. And on top of that, the fact that we have a data-driven evidence-based training allows us for a culture of continuous improvement. Each flight gives us the opportunity, meaningful data from which we can learn and continue feeding these iterative enhancements and interim methodologies. At the very end, we should consider this as a dynamic, adaptive, let's say, framework that helps us at ensuring that our training standards are always aligned with the cutting edge of aviation safety. So as a conclusion, for EBT, embracing digital technologies and data analysis is fundamental, is key, holds a tremendous potential. But at the same time, we need to ensure that we acknowledge, we are aware, and we adapt on a proactive way to the digital barriers that will challenge the adoption of EBT. And that's precisely the purpose of this research and this very webinar. So with that, which are the limitations that we identified? The ones that you can see in the previous slide, which are the customization of EBT programs, the evaluation of pilots and key training data gathering. Then the third one is instructor concordance assurance programming. And the final is the link and communication between authorities and operators and the role of authorities in the context of EBT. So going to the specifics of the challenges, I would like now to welcome to my colleagues, Alex Olivera and Andrea Bujol, who are the main researchers on this very key study. Welcome.
Thank you, Antonio. Hello, everyone.
Thank you, Antonio. Hello, everyone.
So let's start with the first limitation. Customization of the EBT programs. Now, initially, the EBT program is designed based on a set selection and adaptation of a set of training topics and scenarios that are captured in the regulation. Specifically, in the CAO framework, we have the appendices 2 and 6 of the CAO Doc 9995. And in the EU regulation, we have MC2 and MC6 of the OFC 232. Okay, so how the regulation captures this? Regulation basically displays a set of tables with the complete set of training topics and scenarios, as well as the required frequency to be adopted, and operators adopt this and distribute these training topics along the different phases of the modules. So this is concerning the training topics and the different scenarios. But then it comes the contextualization, the customization. So we need to adapt these generic EBT programs to the specific needs of the operator, what means to our own operational risks and as well to our own training needs, which we have identified from analysis of airlines operational data. What kind of airlines operational data, it means the inner loop, what kind of internal data can we use to customize these training topics? We have the SMS, Safety Management System, we have FPM, flight data, occurrence reports, we have as well the internal line operation safety audits. There are many more to be covered. And at the end, based on the analysis of all this data, we can customize the programs in a way that we are developing our pilot competencies in a context or in a scenario that is relevant to our own operations. In this regard, Alex, which are the main limitations that we have defined in the customization of EBT programs?
Well, thank you, Antonio. The first limitation regarding the customization of the programs is the lack of a governance framework between the training and safety departments. Modifying the framework of competencies and the training topics to be implemented is something that is not usually considered by the operators. They normally use the competency framework and the training topics, as Antonio was saying, that are provided by the regulator without introducing modifications. So the real customization of the programs takes place in-house, and as a result of the interaction between safety and training departments. So the first challenge here is coordination and, of course, governance. In the most mature operators, we have observed incipient initiatives for this coordination, which involved a governance framework of recurrent meetings, and where in that meetings, general safety trends and serious events are usually shared. These trends are also discussed, and then they are considered for tailoring specific training scenarios. However, EBT is designed to develop competencies to solve, as Antonio was saying before, underlying problems, and not just the most serious incidences, also the most common ones. So that is where the challenge lies, at exploiting and jointly discussing the relevant safety data, and that requires an additional coordination level between safety and training. FDM is vital for the EBT programs, and more emphasis should be placed on encouraging a close cooperation and integration between safety department and the training department. And that is mainly because considering that most operators, the more mature operators, have improved a lot in that area since the start of the implementation, and it is considered to be essential for the correct development and conduction of the programs. So something that is very effective is that when a particular proposal coming from the safety department, after observing a trend, for example, in the safety data, the operator records and documents how these changes have been integrated into the programs, and also performing follow-up to check the effectiveness. Nonetheless, we should not neglect the challenge that it comes for exchanging and discussing this kind of data, given its sensitivity and of course the data protection firewalls that exist. Additionally, Antonio was also mentioning that the collection and use of data from the line operation safety audits is also very beneficial as they focus more on the human behaviors and are more oriented towards understanding the FDM data from another perspective. So this practice, it allows to collect data and information in a real environment and to gain insights from another point of view. So to conclude, and as we were saying before, the provision of safety data to the training department should be further promoted for it to be included in EBT programs. In that way, the operational risk encountered by the safety department can be addressed. And well, in reality, this is also the path towards enhanced EBT. Well, the fact that that governance is needed, and with the objective of being able to share that data between safety and training departments in an effective way. That also means that both departments have the need to communicate in a common language. So that brings us to the next limitation. That in that case is the second one that we have included in the area of the customization of the programs. That is that in most operators, the training and safety department do not share a common taxonomy. And that means that the exchange of safety data to be introduced into the training programs is not always as efficient as it could be. And that is mainly due to a lack of root cause information and the missing relationship or mapping between the safety events that are provided by the safety department and the competencies that are used in the training, in EBT training. So in that regard, ensuring that the safety department is able to acquire an understanding of the competencies and the behaviors that are usually used in training requires an effort in the standardization of that safety department on the operator's end. And that is commonly materialized in EBT dissemination and promotion initiatives. What we have observed in that case is that in some companies and some operators, they are already implementing a type of mapping between safety events and the training competencies. And something that is really interesting that we also have seen is that they have mixed profiles with both safety and also training expertise. And an example for this is safety staff who are also instructors. So an aspect, as we were saying, that could help a lot is that the data coming from the safety department is then provided with that mapping to the competencies and behaviors used in training. So in that way, the communication would be for sure smoother, and for the training department, it will also be easier to identify which training topics can contribute to mitigate the risks that are identified and shared by the safety department. Also in that regard, work is being done in the working group EOFDM WGC on the mapping between FDM methods, namely the FDM precursors and events, and the proficiency check items of conventional training as per RFC 230. So considering that, a similar direction could be then explored for the EBT.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Now I would like to move on to the next challenge, which is the evaluation of pilots and key training data gathering. Now we are discussing here the gathering and usage of training data itself. EBT is characterized by the assessment of set of 9 competencies, right? By which a pilot will ensure that it's capable of managing both usual expected situations and as well dangerous, hazardous, unforeseen situations. And this pilot's performance on each competency is assessed by observing a set of specific behaviors defined for each competency and then applying a standardized grading scale. And now we can recognize how this stage is so important from a leader's perspective, because we are collecting, we are integrating, we are manning the actual data that later on we need to exploit, we need to analyze to identify training needs. So this has a lot to do with data quality and data representativeness. And on that regard, we have identified some limitations on data. Would you please further explain us?
Yes, thank you, Antonio. As you've mentioned, so EBT is data-driven, and there's a significant amount of data that is generated on what and how it's evaluated. So just remember, there are 9 competencies between 5 and 11 observable behaviors for each one of them, where the instructor has to observe, has to take notes, to record all the or what is happening, to be able afterwards to translate it into the grading system. So in here, enough time should be given to the debriefing, which is an essential part of the assessment, and additional guidance on what to focus on, what to observe during the session, because this is gained with experience, but some additional guidance should be needed in here. And also what the solutions, the digital solutions nowadays should be focused to help them to ease their work. And of course, we should be very careful here because the risk arrays, there's a danger to take this sensitive and human performance assessment towards a mathematical and automatic assessment, which should be definitely avoided. The decision making should remain in the hands of the instructor, but the solutions and the technology should help them to be able to capture the essential elements of the assessments. Talking about, so there's a lot of data, but what about the quality? In terms of quality, we've also seen that the regulation recommends a standard on how to assess, but each operator has adopted it as there's room for interpretation, has given its understanding on the grades and on the method of assessment, and this can create and can jeopardize the quality of the data afterwards. So EASA has already taken actions in this aspect. The working group SBT 0012 is working on it. There have been a lot of discussions on the observable behaviors, on the Venn ORCA methodologies, which you are very familiar with for sure. In fact, there has been a recent update of the grading table in the applicable means of compliance. So there's still work to do there to provide more guidance. And another important element in terms of quality to ensure it, the pre-filled templates should be definitely binded, because what we've seen that they can jeopardize the quality of the data and the representativeness of it. So we've seen that there's a lot of data. We have to ensure its quality, and with this, with the grades, we can see how effective the program is. But what about the difficulty? We've seen and we've learned that there's a need for an additional metric on the difficulty of the program. What would be useful? This indicator would be useful to compare grades, to see how effective the program is, and to see why discrepancies among grades can happen. The discrepancy between grading between one instructor and another one could come from the difficulty of the scenarios and of the modules, but also can come from the experience of the trainees. And this metric would help identify these potential issues of the program itself. So this would sum up a little bit what we've seen in terms of the inner loop and the data collecting and gathering within the program.
Okay, thank you, Nod. Then let's move on to the next challenge, which is the ICAP, Instructor Conformance Assurance Program. This might be the most frequently highlighted challenge among the stakeholders who have participated in the interviews and in the preliminary task. So the ICAP, operators must ensure that the data generated and collected under the training system is reliable. That is, that the training data is capturing the actual performance of the pilots, but it's not does not introduce any bias coming from the instructor themselves. That is, in concordance among the instructors must be ensured. How do we ensure or achieve concordance? We have two means. The first one is standardization training. So we need to ensure that instructors understand which is like the golden standard, which is the best practice to assess the specific competencies. And then by analyzing the actual concordance, defining a set of metrics to evaluate and monitor the concordance, which in terms may identify some instructor behaviors, deviations of this overall concordance, and with that trigger some sensibilization or standardization training. In the context of the EBT, then, the instructor concordance assurance program has two main elements. The first one is alignment, which reflects the accuracy, how instructors are aligned with the golden standards, best practices of the company. And then the agreement, which captures the homogeneity, how instructors provide similar assessments over specific competencies. in this regard, another huge topic. What is our summary of the limitation?
Definitely, the ICAP has been a recurrent topic in our interviews. In terms of alignment, what we've seen, most of operators, what they use the reference videos representing the golden standards on which should be the standard behavior in terms and in line with the grading system that they have defined. Unfortunately, let's say this is very time-consuming and resource-demanding, which is not possible for all the operators, only for the mature ones. But what can we do for the other ones? How can we learn from the best practice? If we look in the industry, we can learn from a similar program, the EOFDM, where there's a forum where the most experienced one, they exchange good practice and best practice on FDM. A similar path or a similar approach could be used in EBT to learn from the more mature operators how this golden standard could be defined, and maybe even a baseline golden reference, and then the smaller operators could work on. But some help and some support should be provided in here to allow everybody to go to a mix and eventually to a baseline EBT program. So once the golden standard and the reference is defined, the program, the ICAP itself should ensure that instructors are aligned and agree among themselves with regards to the assessment. And in here, this is the most challenging part because of three main aspects. The first one is that there's some additional guidance is needed in terms of a framework with the metrics, what should be evaluated, which statistical methods could be used, such as not an average, but the distribution of the grades, the root cause analysis to understand exactly what is behind those figures. There's also a need of a tool, even if it's developed in-house or from an external provider, but there's a need from technology support. And the third one would be that there's a need for data analytical knowledge behind to be able to define the whole program, the framework, and to interpret the data and to translate it into a program itself. So once the program is set, the alignment agreement and the metrics, how do we ensure that the data that we are looking at is reliable? We've seen that this pressure and this need for concordance might influence the instructors. For example, if the concordance is defined as an average 3, the instructors might be pressed behind to go towards a grade 3 during their assessment, and this has to be avoided. This can be avoided by analyzing concordance and without informing the instructor that he has been out of the line, with common meetings, training, and so to get him back on track and ensure that everybody understands the same and the standard of the company itself. And again, I've mentioned previously the pre-filled templates, which definitely should be abandoned and not included as an option for the assessment in training and in evaluation. So this is just the top of the iceberg, let's say, with the ICAP. We could go more into the details, and I'm sure that you have a lot to say in this, but yeah, just a few cents on what we've seen so far.
For sure, we will further research this in the continuation of the project. Thank you, Nada. And now let's move on to the next, the final challenge, which is the link and communication with the authorities and the role of the authorities in EBT. Now, the interlink link between authorities and operators is, we could summarize that it's twofold. On the one hand, going back to the customization, previously we have mentioned the inner loop, but the outer loop, the use of operational data coming from the industry-wide data or from the regulators itself. We're speaking here about mandatory bonus reports, annual safety statistics, incident accident reports, origin OEMs data. There's a lot of data that could be shared by regulators to operators to allow them or to enable them to customize the program as per the key risk areas at national and regional European level. That's one thing. And on the other hand, the communication should be bidirectional because operators are required to provide a certain set of metrics on a regular basis to the authorities. Why so? Because the authorities are responsible for monitoring and verifying the correct functioning, effectiveness of the EBT programs. So this entails like a joint governance of sharing the data and metrics between the operators and the authorities. And what are the limitations here?
Okay, and in here, you've just mentioned that EBT is quite new, and we can say that it has been driven by the operators themselves because their main objective is to provide safe operation and to ensure that their pilots are competent. In this context, authorities are challenged to keep the pace with all these evolutions and then not have the capacity and resources to be to respond to them, to provide data for the EBT customization. And as you've just mentioned, the collaboration and the link between the operator and the authority should be in two ways, not just reporting, but the authority providing guidance and providing data for the programs to be improved. Another consequence of this limited capacity, let's say, of the authorities in the situation that they are, is the visibility of the data, of the training data. So in here, there's no defined or well-defined framework in terms of reporting for the EBT implementation. So there are the different levels of the grading, but not on which granularity this should be shared, how often, and which indicators exactly. So more guidance and options should be provided there. Another aspect to be considered here is that at a national level, the authorities could use the information from the EBT to establish a safety risk management to be able to identify potential risks from the data coming from the EBT program or the competency of the pilots. And also looking at the EBT continuous improvement. It's not just the implementation, but afterwards to provide support, to provide insight into the an overview of the EBT implementation at national level. And finally, we've just mentioned that the role and the paper of the authority should be ensuring that EBT is implemented correctly. Okay, but if we look at the future, we could think about a different role, the authority ensuring the consistency of the program, and in here we make preference to the comparison and the revalidation of the program itself. So EBT is a norm reference grading with the maturity, with the evolution of the program itself, and the EBT itself could become easy for the trainees and even for the instructors. So the grading could be biased and moved, and even if there's alignment and concordance through the program, this cannot be seen. And here the comparison with the Appendix 9, which is recommended into the regulation, forces to revalidate the program, but different options should be considered, as Appendix 9 might seem, which is the conventional training, seem far away for the new ones and for the EBT. There are companies that have 12 years implementing EBT. So for those at least, other options could be proposed and more guidance should be is needed in this regard. So this would sum up the main limitations that we've identified in terms of authorities.
Thank you very much, Andrada. And this is all for the attendees to know. This is all concerning a brief summary over the challenges. We have tried to synthesize and group all the different limitations that we have encountered in the interviews in these two main topics and this minimum list of limitations. I'm sure that there are many more to be addressed, and this is why your contribution at this stage is so important. I would like then to move on to the next steps, and for that, we'll come back to you, Nuria.
Thank you, Tim, for guiding us through these initial preliminary results. As we mentioned at the beginning, the objective of this webinar is not just for us to explain you where we are in this research, but as well to hear your voices. So please feel free to use the chat for the question and answers to give us your feedback and launch any question that you might have after this presentation. With all that, as I mentioned, we are in the middle of the consultation process. It will continue still some months, and our idea with this final identification of the challenges will be to go a step further and start identifying potential solutions to those limitations. Of course, the project is focused on data applications, So the potential solutions that we will focus on will be those that can be covered through data applications. Afterwards, as we do not want to implement or to recommend solutions because they just exist. We want to recommend those solutions that actually add value to the industry and that can be a game changer for the different limitations that we have. We will evaluate the impact of those solutions proposed. And finally, with this evaluation and what we observe from what are those solutions that will add major value to our industry, we will issue some recommendations for EASA to consider in the future. EASA is a regulator, but these recommendations do not need to go through a regulatory perspective, but they can also be in the form of working groups, training sessions, additional standards, etc., etc. Apart from the questions and answers that you can provide us, we also need your inputs through the survey that we will launch, or we have just launched. This survey, as I mentioned, is on the one hand to gather in a more systemic manner your feedback on the different challenges that we have presented here, so that to understand exactly the impact of these challenges across the industry and the different players, and as well to start this conversation of potential solutions and the impact that those solutions can have from your perspective. So please, if you can scan this QR code and start filling the survey now, or in the future if you want to take it or digest the information and take it slowly. As well, we invite you to share the link of the survey and the presentation when we distribute it to you, to the rest of your colleagues that may not have been able to attend, or that for whatever reasons are not in this webinar right now, so that they can as well provide us with their feedback. As I mentioned, if you leave your contact details as well in the survey, it is not mandatory that you can do it. We will include you as well in our consultation list, so that we can keep you updated on the different events that we will develop during the project, and as well on the reports that we will be publishing. The report from this research is public and will be published through the website hosted by EASA. But to avoid any of you missing this publication, we can use this information, the contact list, to distribute the report as it is launched. And finally, if there are any questions on the chat, I leave the floor now again to the team so that they can start answering some of the questions. If there are a lot, we will probably not be able to answer them all, but we will capture them and try to give an answer after the webinar to those that are on the backstage, let's say, that cannot be tackled today.
Let us check the chat. We have received some private questions. Please share your questions through the common chat so everyone can see the questions. The questions is: are you going to publish the outcomes of the study? The outcomes of the study, exactly. As Nuria will explain, yes, it will be publicly available. As well, Andara, we received some questions answering the update, the email that we share with the contact webinar.
Yes, so there was a question related to the, so we were mentioning that the technology today should support instructors, but what can we refer, so what solutions are we thinking of? So in here, we can mention some of the initiatives that we've seen with operators that we talked. We are talking about FTM from the flights, but there are initiatives to go to take and to analyze FTM data from the simulators. So this is something that is currently investigated and could be an option to support the instructors in their day-to-day work. Another option would be one of the providers that we software providers that we interviewed. There are flight simulation software that could use to understand the root cause analysis behind, and then to improve the training topics and to tailor it to the real needs of the operator.
We are receiving some questions in the chat.
Yeah.
Yes, Antonio, we have in the Q&A, we have a question from Robert Gottwald. As a large ATO training provider, we provide initial pilot training, and the question, I mean, there's a little bit more information there, but basically they say there is 4 different terms for OPs at the moment: performance indicator, behavioral markers, observable behavior, behavioral indicators, etc. We can, will EASA do some remedy? We already started with this remedy. If you see the ED decision 2022-004 Romeo from 2022, in the ATQP in Oro FC A245, we already discussing at GM this matter, and basically, you know, behavioral markers is the term used in AQP and ATQP, and observable behavior is the term used in EBT. At some, we basically say that both of them are very similar, but yes, it's something to work on, and you know, it's a project because we have a rulemaking task 0599 phase 2 for the initial type rating courses, etc., that we are discussing with the SPT 0012, this safety promotion task force that the EASA created early this year. And in this context, we will try to standardize, but it's not only a problem of EASA, it's a problem that the Americans in the AQP do something. ICAO has also different wording, and we also need to standardize our regulation. Back to you, Antonio.
Thank you, Francisco. There are some additional questions. The ICAP is addressing the inter-rater reliability, and I believe that Tim has answered that question. Yes, indeed. You can see, I believe that there are some recommendations, some basic guidelines in the EBT manual in that regard. But anyhow, that's something that should be the actual metrics governing the overall ICAP should be further developed, that we have explained. As a matter of fact, I believe that in the EBT manual, they're including some additional metrics to measure the ICAP, some methods, the Cohen's kappa, and so on. But what we've seen from the operators is that they are, well, what we've seen from the most mature operators is that they are using more advanced statistical methods to identify, let's say, deviations from the common standard and so on, rather than the actual ones provided in the EBT manual. But for sure, something to be further explored.
Yes, another question. When you issue the recommendation for EASA, will it affect the ICAO and the other authority for the future? So this, the framework of this project and the context is for EASA itself, and we propose some actions and recommendations, but then it's on EASA's hands to see what and which level this will be implemented. At this stage, at least, we do not foresee impact on the other authorities.
Yes, on behalf of EASA, this research is made from European money, public money, and of course, you know, we initiated this action as EASA, and we will take the recommendation, the research recommendations into account. We cannot, you know, we will not at any point force ICAO or any other member state of ICAO to follow our research. This is, you know, we will make this research available, and if those authorities and ICAO and other authorities from other member states, they want to read it and you know, and make questions to us, of course we will be very happy that they take all research into account. But there's no, thank you for the question, Captain Choi, but there's no way we're gonna, you know, let's say we're gonna try to convince the Chinese authority or ICAO to, you know, to follow our recommendations. We're gonna public this research, and if they want to make questions to us or you know, or address those recommendations in their regulatory system, of course we will be very happy. But the research is not meant for international, for the international arena. Is meant for us, for EASA, to try to improve the regulation and to improve our standards. Back to you, Andrada.
Thank you, Francisco. Yes.
There was some question concerning the tools, I believe.
Well, I do not. It's more a statement that we should be careful with. So not the quantity of data is coming from the Christian Norden. So not the quantity of data, but its quality. So similarly, too much captured observable behaviors could easily bias the root cause. So yes, this is something to be considered when extracting the conclusions and recommendations. Thank you, Christian. Yeah.
In that regard, we've seen that there are some research initiatives in the context of simulators, right, for the easing, let's say, decision making or the assessment, something very incipient. And there is the point that you have raised before, that we should support the decision making. We should support the instructors at making their decisions. At the end, should be that contextual data for instructors to base their decision, their assessment, rather than actually automatizing or building all these assessments based on a mathematical model. And as well, we have had some interviews with some providers which are proposing some solutions to ease this integration between safety and training. There are some interesting flight simulation tools that are enabled to make this cooperative analysis over a specific observation windows to be able to translate these safety events into actual root cause analysis. So to liaise between these training and safety departments. Any additional question?
Petit says thank you for the moment. Thanks to you for your time and for joining today.
We received an additional question via email.
Andrada, there are some questions in the Q&A. We have another 2 questions from Ian and from Robert.
Yes, please.
I don't know if you want me to read it or you read it yourself. The first one is, do you not think that the complexity of the EBT regulation is a barrier to entry into the program? From Ian. Yes, we understand, and that's why we are making a lot of support in the SPT 0012 EBT manual. Normally a regulation, the regulation is the regulation, and that's it. You know, there's no manuals or guidance, I mean, further guidance normally. But we are very aware of this point, that the complexity of the EBT regulation, well, it's a complex program. It's not easy, and that's why we are making a lot of effort, and we created specifically this SPT 0012 that you can see in the European Plan for Aviation Safety. We've been providing webinars. We are not working in the EBT manual and improving the EBT manual, trying to, you know, make the industry aware, but we are really, yes, we are aware of this. Before the research, and probably the research will continue digging into this matter, but unfortunately, you know, this program is much more advanced, and you know, it's more complex. You are taking a lot of data together, and there's certain things that needs to be established. This is what we call performance-based regulation. You know, it's much more flexible, more efficient economically, and you know, from a practical point of view, is much more effective. The pilots usually learn more from this program. Economically speaking, for the operator as well, you know, according to the regulatory impact assessment and what we are seeing, there's already 26 airlines either implementing EBT mixed or already in EBT baseline. we see that there's some economic benefits as well for the operator. But at the end of the day, yeah, this complexity creates a complex regulation as well, because both of them are, let's say, linked. I hope that the research program, and I am referring to Antonio and the rest of the team, to try to make solutions on this, and that's why we are trying this research. Taking care of this research. Let's see what are the conclusions, but I don't see a possibility to really have a very lean regulation, because of the complexity of the program. Then the regulation is kind of, following the complexity of the program, and then you have as well a complex regulation. That's the question. I don't know if you guys want to add anything, Andrada?
No, thank you, Francisco. Yes, as you might say, there's always the challenge between leave it open and be straightforward to what this implies, as this is a quite complex concept.
There's another question here. Yeah, on this matter of from Ian, thank you very much. Also as a regulator, we see that, for example, the ATQP regulation in Oro FC A245 is much more lean, is much more, let's say, simple. But this creates then a lot of questions between the operator and the authority, because they need to agree between them. And you see that the ATQP regulation is being there for 20 years, and we have very, very little number of ATQP operators in Europe, while the EBT regulation has been just 2 years in force, and we have the same amount already of ATQP operators. So the intake of ATQP operators in 20 years were X number, I think is 6, but don't quote me in this number exactly. But in EBT in EBT baseline, we already have the same amount of numbers of ATQP in 2 years. So it's 10 times more. We are having an intake of 10 times higher than ATQP, even because the regulation is much more, let's say, clear, and there's less discussion between the authority and the operator, although there's a lot of discussion as well. And we are seeing another 20 operators in EBT mix. So we will see that in the next 4 years or 5 years, we will have around 20 operators in EBT baseline. That's our hope. So you see that doesn't mean that because the complexity of the regulation is high, then the intake is not going to be high, because we have experienced the ATQP with very lean regulatory framework, and then a lot of discussion later on between the operators and the authority, and that leads to a delay and a lot of resources by each actor. The next question, and we need to finish now, is: do you consider operators ATO using an alternative grading system other than 1 to 5? As per the AMC2 or FC 231 Delta 1, as a potential challenge for data compatibility. So this is already being addressed as well in the EBT manual. We have the possibility to do an alternative grading, and that's the AMC2. You will need to follow an ALMOC. So an approval of the authority, of your national authority, is required. We recommend at the moment, and it's very clear in the EBT manual, the idea of 1 to 4, where we merge the 4 and 5, into a single grading. So then it becomes 1 to 4 because of the merge of 4 and 5. Other possibilities is an option, of course, but then we go into the problems of compatibility, because the idea is, and we have conducted a study of 26 airlines. Enrique Monzón is here today, who was driven this with the Arab step, this study, and this is good because, and the conclusion of this study can be extended to the whole industry, because either they are in 1 to 5 or in 1 to 4. That's the 26 actors implementing EBT. they are in this kind of grading. So then the conclusions are very easy and very clear. Now, when you go into 1 to 7 or 1 to, 1 to 11 or something, then it will be very difficult to understand and to make a real comparison really quick and be, because there will be a data normalization that we need to do, etc. So at the moment, the recommendation is that we explore the 1 to 5 or the 1 to 4 with this idea of merging the 4 and 5. But of course, if the researchers, and they are data experts, not us, EASA is not a data expert, but they are data experts, and they identify other gradings that could be more valuable, then of course we will be happy to listen. Back to you, Andrada.
Thank you, Francisco. So yeah, I think we will have to close now. This has been the last question within the Q&A, but remember, we will share the presentation with the attendees today. There is an email contact for us, so just feel free to share any thoughts that you might have, or recommendation or idea. And we would very much appreciate if you could answer the questionnaire and provide us some inputs to make and to provide more realistic reports to EASA to work on.